current trail network supports a wide variety of people, from the novice out for a short stroll to those who will spend one or more nights along a trail. Given this broad variety of trail users, how can trail clubs and others better assist the range of hikers and still protect the trail? What are some of the challenges to the trail, to trail maintainers, and to hikers? Is overuse and misuse of the trail and its facilities a major problem?
On my initial trips on the AT, to me, it was a disaster. It was overused. It was, I could only describe hiking that trail in the spring as an army in retreat. So much had been abandoned along that trail. When you got to a shelter, it was so filthy. I mean, it was trash everywhere. It was not the environment of a trail I thought it should be. So with the Benton McKay Trail, I just decided we want a more primitive trail.
It's a problem when you have 100 people a day or even 50 people a day moving along. They're camping every night in the same spot. So even if we wanted to maintain the trail as more of a wilderness experience, it'd just be very difficult to do because of the amount of traffic. Atlanta's only an hour and a half away, 70 miles away. So 70 miles away, there's 7 million people who might want to go out on the trail.
One of our biggest problems is that we're loving the trail to death. From all the plastic bottles of water that are left on the trail, but just the sheer things of food left and other things like that, and of course trash, and bringing in and how we get people to really know and live the 7 principles of leave no trace. To me, that's all really big key thing.
Is the inexperienced hiker a threat to the trail?
Of course, the numbers have increased every year, particularly in the last several years. The numbers have increased exponentially, and our trails, our privies, our shelters was not designed to accommodate that many people. And in the spring, which starts March 1st, runs through April, maybe early May, the first 30 miles of the trail in Georgia is absolutely inundated with hikers. And most of those hikers are completely unprepared. I remember when I started hiking, the first hike I ever went on in the Appalachian Trail, my best friend and I had been talking about it for a long time. This was in the early 70s. We drove our car to the Amaclota Falls State Park, didn't know any better. We parked our car next to the visitor center and we started climbing up the side of the falls. It took us about 3 hours. Only when we got to the top did we see the parking lot and the starting point for the trail.
And I do remember one story about some couple that had these huge packs and were carrying really like heavy gear, like cast iron skillets, and had like a, I think maybe a machete and a big knife and a fishing rod, and they were going to hunt and fish along the trail and catch, whatever it was that they were going to eat. Well, I think they got educated. And I've been up on Springer Mountain doing trail maintenance or whatever in early spring and meeting through hikers, and they're just clear, of course they're just starting out, but they've never hiked a day in their life. They have no idea what they're getting into, and I'm always amazed at that, because I think if I were going to through hike, I would be planning that thing for months and know, where I was going to go and how I was going to get my food and do all my mail drops. And so I'm always kind of amazed when I meet somebody who just decides they're going to go out and hike the AT, and I think they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. So that's one reason why GATC is so important.
Homeless people or non-hikers can be an issue. Generally, if we hear about homeless people, then the agency tries to get them off the trail and get them to some place that can provide them with assistance. There are some people who are perpetual hikers on the AT who just sort of hike up and down the trail and do that because it's if they know what they're doing, a kind of a low-cost place to exist, and nice place. I would say there's other issues like people that put advertisements in shelters or on signs and stuff and try and encourage people to participate in their businesses. It's illegal to advertise on federal property, so that's an issue. I think that one of the things that bugs me the most in Georgia on a typical year is the well-intentioned people who come out and provide food for AT hikers, referred by some as providing trail magic. We call them trail feeds. We wonder why they think people on a 6-month vacation need to be fed.
What threat are bear to the hikers in Georgia?
I don't care what Forest Service issue you're talking about, it's a balancing act. And it usually has something to do with people, and the solution usually has something to do with people self-managing themselves well, being responsible users. I think about, this leads me to think about the bear issues that we have on the Appalachian Trail. And it's not the bears' problem, they're just hungry, right? It's people's bringing readily available food to their space. So the solution is not, let's get rid of the bears. The solution is, how do we be responsible hikers and maintain our food and other things that the bears want in a responsible way. So all these trail issues are no different. It's about how do we work together collaboratively to come up with solutions to the problems that we create ourselves.
Yeah, we had a bear at Low Gap that would keep the hikers in the shelter. That's because they leave food out and everything. People drop food and they don't do food storage. Instead of the community putting it on the hikers to take care of their food, we did it for them by putting the bear cages.
But bear boxes and bear cables are necessary in the places where hikers congregate, because bears find that as an easy pickings, and they come in and they bluff charge. They don't really harm anyone, but they will steal your food in a heartbeat, and bears are very smart, and they know how to sometimes remove bear bags from trees and all.
What are some of the current threats to the treadway and structures along the AT?
Our trails are getting too wide now. I think, we shouldn't have any trail over 24 inches, I wouldn't think now. And we got a lot, it's running 4 or 5 foot.
It's surprising how much wear and tear a trail has, and that my attitude used to be, once you built it, it was there. But it's like a highway. If you just leave a highway, it gets cracks in it and plants start growing in it and it deteriorates. It's the same thing with a trail. When they're first built, it seems from experience that maybe for 2 or 3 years they're good as new and they're great, and then they start degrading. One of the biggest problems is water. Water causes more damage than anything else. The assumption with a lot of people is that it's foot traffic. It's your boots on the ground chewing up the tread. But if it's properly built and you're building in mineral soil, that's not true. Water causes much more damage than feet do.
Well, there are 5 bridges across the AT in Georgia, and the first one was built at Noontutla Creek by the Forest Service. The next bridges were put in at Justice and Blackwell Creeks, and these were done in the early 80s, and they lasted about 3 years because they were put in with natural materials which tended to rot out real fast.
I like bridges. There are certain bridges that I think we're going to have to keep. The one across Stover Creek is a log crossing bridge, and we had to put it up because the storms kept moving the rocks for the rock crossing, and people weren't able to make it across. It was getting dangerous. So that's the reason for that. Our biggest problem on the trail, I think, is erosion, more than people or anything else. I know we've got a couple of areas that are getting severely eroded and causing holes in the trail. As far as the shelters and privies on the Appalachian Trail, especially in Georgia go, the ATC and several of the other groups are wanting to phase them out. They don't want to have permanent structures on the trail. So one of the challenges is to make sure that we keep the shelters up to date and in good shape, so there is no reason for them to remove a shelter or a privy or a bridge off the trail. They're getting away from shelters, they're getting away from bridges. They are now doing more rock crossings than putting a bridge in. So my job has been to make sure that we maintain all of these in proper shape. Graffiti is probably one of the biggest problems that we have with shelters. Not so much on privies. People don't spend a lot of time carving up privies and all and writing on them. They do a little bit, but not a lot. They do it on the shelters. All of our picnic tables have graffiti carved into them. A lot of the shelters have information put on them. It's gotten to the point now where people are even carving things into trees. The biggest problem on shelters and privies is that the area around them are destroyed.
Social trails, and I guess Blood Mountain is a good example where you'll find some social trails. Cut-throughs cause real problems there because they are not constructed to be sustainable, they're not maintained.
Recently, the Appalachian Trail Club has created 2 special crews to address major trail maintenance issues. One crew is a group of certified sawyers, and the other is a rock crew.
My interest in the club is just maintaining and working on the trail. I can't tell you how many times I've been out working in certain areas, and some through hiker or a regular hiker comes through and says, "Gee, you work on the trail. How many miles of the Appalachian Trail have you done?" And I say, "Oh, well over 2,000 miles, but 90% of that's in Georgia." And we've put together a pretty sophisticated method of tracking and making sure that blowdowns are taken off the trail within a period of 2 weeks. We instruct people to take a picture of the blowdown on their smartphone with their GPS turned on. Send it to GATC at gmail.com. So we all are notified that there is a blowdown at this location. It pinpoints it. So what it does for me is I get a chance to see where it is, whether it's in wilderness or non-wilderness, so I now know who has to go out on it, either a chain sawyer or a crosscut sawyer. So this has really streamlined our process, and we do approximately between 200 to 300 blowdowns per year. That's in a normal year. Now I've been the Sawyer chair for 5 years, and I've only had one normal year. I've got about 25 sawyers. About 6 of them are certified in both crosscut and in chainsaw. So if we were not out there clearing that blowdown, then you would see these walk-arounds become the trail. So at a certain point, the trail's not the trail anymore. It's been completely relocated. Also, we do build bridges. We just recently built a bridge at Lance Creek. It's a 2-log span, and we were out there working with an adze because we cannot use mechanized equipment to flatten the log, so it was walkable. Having swampers along with us on the trail, part of their responsibility is to go north and south of the blowdown and stop all hikers coming through so that they cannot interfere with the cutting or be endangered by the cutting.
I've been a trail maintainer for about 50 years. My latest one about close to 40 years that I've been working with. And I just learned to really like that kind of work, and particularly rock work, which I did a lot of over the past several years. Some of the early work was from Bob Proudman, and I just just got into it and just felt like I really enjoyed doing that, and I was pretty good at it.
We use rocks for a couple of different reasons on the trail. One is if you have a steep place and you have no way to take the trail except up the steepness, we have to put steps in. Steps can be built out of rocks or wood. and on a trail like the AT that runs, it's a wilderness trail. It's not a city park. We don't want to use cross ties or 6x6s. We don't want to use dimensional lumber. So we can use logs, and those have to be locust logs. Farmers said that a locust post would last 60 years once they put it in the ground, so basically their lifetime. They didn't have to replace a post. We consider that a locust step or check dam will last at least 30 years on the trail. You put an oak in there, it looks really hard when you put it in. 5 years later, it's rotted out. So we can use wood. What's better though is rock. Rock is considered to last hundreds of years if you put it in correctly. That's another thing that's changed over the years is how we deal with rocks. If you look on the trail now, you look at old steps or old water bars or check dams, the rocks are way too small. So they end up working out, or they fall out, or they erode under a little bit, and you have to rebuild those things constantly. Current practice is that a rock shouldn't be used unless it weighs at least 150 pounds. Well, that's more than one person's going to move. So if one person can move a rock, it's probably too small. And if you put it in correctly, it should stay there and be stable and not erode underneath. There are techniques you use for that too. So that's for steps. So rocks can be used for water bars to take the water off the trail, or for check dams or check steps, which slow the water down when it's on a fall line. But one of the other new modern methods is to stop putting structures in, which is a log or a step when you're dealing with water. And now we're trying to build what are called dips. And a dip is not just a shallow place in the trail. A properly built dip is 20 to 30 feet long, and it's built in such a way that it almost maintains itself. They're much, much easier for maintainers to keep clean.
All trails face the threat of tree loss and invasive plants overcoming native plants.
One of the places we decided to use pesticides for the hemlock woolly adelgid and the emerald ash borer is along the Appalachian Trail. So, and just this past year, we added wilderness areas along the Appalachian Trail to our National Environmental Policy Act work that allows, again, volunteers to help us go out and treat these trees that would not be saved any other way than through pesticide treatment. It's very true that roads and trailheads are serious vectors for non-native invasives. We see this not just in trail systems, but throughout our programs, where we have work going on with mechanical equipment. We make sure they wash that equipment before they go in the woods, for example. If they've come from another private piece of property or wherever they've come from, we don't know what seeds literally they're bringing with them on that equipment. And so we ask them to wash those before they go to work on our property.
In the early trail days, the forest was largely populated with chestnut trees, really nice big hardwood trees. And a blight was introduced, the chestnut blight, and it decimated those trees. Today we have hemlock woolly adelgid that's attacking the hemlocks. And at one time, from Springer down to Stover Creek, there was a beautiful stand of hemlocks along Stover Creek there. Today it looks like just skeletons there, and unfortunately it's decimated most of those.
What are some of the unique issues a hiker faces on the Bartram and Pinhoti trails?
I mean, hiking the trail in Georgia, you're pretty fortunate because you don't have to do a lot of road walking. You have to cross some significant roads in Georgia, but you don't have to actually get out and walk paved roads. You get into North Carolina, and we've got about 12 miles of road walking.
The thing I was a little bit concerned about when the Forest Service put their stamp of approval on where the trail route would be was, I suppose they had reasons that they didn't have enough money to build genuinely new trail everywhere, but they relied a whole lot more heavily on old road beds, and in some cases gated roads, than I would have preferred. So
I get emails from people saying they've hiked the whole Bartram Trail, and I even get emails from people who say they've done all those road walks, which I've walked the entire Bartram Trail, but I've not done that 12-mile road walk and do not plan on it. So I think that it's a pretty good mixture of people using the trail. I would say probably the Georgia section gets more day use than the North Carolina section. Particularly those northern sections of the trail around Cheowa Bald in the Nantahala Gorge and Apple Tree Campground. If you know that area, that's some pretty rugged, remote country out there. It does not get near the use that the Georgia section gets. What we don't have, and what I'd like to have, and I think it's real valuable data for any trail club, is just use data.
In addition to currently requiring some road walking, trails running events are encouraged on both the Pinhoti and Bartram trails and can represent a significant portion of trail users during these events.
Even around Franklin, what we're getting right now are more trail runners. And that's a big, big community of people out there right now. So the Bartram Trail, for the last several years, we've had a 50K race on it.
Challenges: Bartram Trail trail maintenance.
This past summer, we lost 5 bridges on the Bartram Trail on that section of the Bartram along the Chattooga. So people just can't, unless you're willing to wade a very cold, high stream right now, you're not going to use those sections of trail. And that's a lot of trail. So, it takes a while to get some of these things through Forest Service processes. And so, that's the Georgia problem we have right now, are just bridges being out, and sort of a constant problem with overuse in Georgia.
Challenges: Pinhoti Trail, trail maintenance, and stream crossings.
Getting across some of those valleys, you've got East Armurchie Creek and West Armurchie Creek, which are good-sized creeks that you have to ford. That's a different experience to work with. Along East Armurchie Creek, you've got a very nice secondary trail system called the Dry Creek Trail System that was built somewhere between 2005 2010. That's got another 26 miles in there. Has nice facilities in terms of a trailhead. The horse people really love it. The mountain bikers love it. They've got all sorts of loops that tie into the Pinhoti there. Once you get off Taylor's Ridge, then you're down in the valley. You've got to cross the Coosa River. And that's no easy feat because there are only really 3 locations that are strategic between Rome and the upstream part of Wise Lake that you can cross it. So you've got to target your trail to get there. But these are creek crossings that are 60 to 80 feet wide, and if the water's high, you're not crossing it, not crossing it in anything. The other challenge, the overriding challenge, is completing a trail that has the minimum amount of road walk possible. That is, get across these valleys where we've got, in one case, about 25 miles of road walk. Around Dalton, we've got them broken up into something like an 11-mile and a 9-mile road walk.
As the song goes, what a wonderful world. We hope that you will hike at least part of one of the 4 major trails in North Georgia and experience the wonderful world that awaits you there. It will be an experience you will never forget.
Georgia, the whole way through. Just an old sweet song. Is Georgia on my mind? Georgia, Georgia, this song for you. It's as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pines. Yeah, yeah. Other arms reach out to me. Other eyes smile tenderly. But still in peaceful dreams I see the road leads back to you. Georgia, Georgia, no peace do I find like an old sweet song. It's Georgia.